The New Orleans Saints could go on a run to wrap up the 2025 season, and I'm going to tell you why winning games is their top priority.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the Saints could absolutely use the return of starting right tackle Taliese Fuaga, but why resting him for at least a few more games or even the rest of the season could be in their best interest. We'll take a look at the next big thing the New Orleans Saints desperately need to improve, which is their run defense, without a question, and we'll kick everything off with the fact that the Saints could go on a run and why their first priority should be winning these games down the stretch. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you coming up on the show today. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making it your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you for helping us get here as we bring you your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. If you want to get in on the middle of the action during this NFL season, visit FanDuel.com so you can place your live bets all throughout the rest of the league's season. The New Orleans Saints have 4 winnable games on their schedule on the way, and they have to make their top priority winning as many of those games as possible. And I know what you're saying. But Ross, there's the draft capital and the draft position, and they could have a top 5 pick. They could have a top 10 pick. You want them to have a top 15 pick? What are they going to do with the top 15 pick? Draft a difference maker. The top of this draft has enough talent that if you can win games down the stretch, you're going to do yourselves more favors winning those games than losing to improve your draft position. And if you look at what it was that the New Orleans Saints did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going on the road in inclement weather against a team that they were better than and coming out on top of that matchup, that is something that the Saints, momentum-wise, should look to carry along throughout the rest of the season. We spoke to safety Terrell Burgess in the locker room on Monday, and he talked about how he very much believes in momentum being a part of the game, and also spoke a little bit about how momentum goes from one game to the next. It's not just about momentum within the 60 minutes of a matchup. And so the Saints have momentum. They built it starting with that second half up against Miami, and then now in this game up against Tampa that by no measure anyone expected them to win. And then now they have the opportunity to carry that into home games against the Carolina Panthers, who they've already beaten this season, against the New York Jets, who might be the worst team in football outside of maybe the Giants and the Titans, but certainly they're in that conversation. Then they go on the road to that Titans team in Nashville, probably a tougher game than a lot of people want to give credit for. And then they're on the road against a division rival to close out the season against the Atlanta Falcons. Those are winnable football games. And the Saints should look to carry the momentum that they've begun to build for themselves and the belief that they've begun to build in themselves and carry that into their next 4 matchups. And if they win all 4 of them, great. If they win 3 out of the 4, great. If they win 2 out of the 4, great. It's a good situation for New Orleans to go out there and showcase that they are a team that's not just rebuilding, that's not just retooling, that's not just developing, but that's getting better, that's improving, and that's becoming competitive. I'm not saying becoming a contender. That's a different thing. And I'm not even talking about the New Orleans Saints like they're going to be a playoff team in 2026. I don't even think I would say that right now, that I think that they will be. I think that they can be, but I don't know that they will be. And that's okay. We don't need to have the answer to that question right now. There's a whole offseason in between now and then. Players are going to leave. Players are going to be signed. Players are going to leave other teams. Players around the league are going to retire. There's going to be so much that's going to shift the fabric of the NFL. And if any season was a good illustration of that, the 2025 NFL season is absolutely an illustration of that. Look at the Houston Texans knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. And now all of a sudden the Kansas City Chiefs are on the in the hunt section of playoff graphics for like the first time in a very long time, it feels like. Meanwhile, the New England Patriots are right back at the top of the AFC, but it is what it is. So for New Orleans, this is a real chance for them to show, hey, building something here. Don't you want to be a part of it? We always put so much focus on the draft, and I love the draft. The draft is my favorite day of the NFL calendar, or my favorite 3 days of the NFL calendar, because each of those 3 days you get to watch 250 plus human beings see their dreams come true. And that's awesome. Plus all of the undrafted free agents that also get signed throughout that day as well. Anywhere between, 7 to 17 more players that end up getting signed by NFL clubs. You get to watch all their dreams come true too. It's one of my favorite parts about doing this job is you get to tell those stories. And I love the storytelling side of it. And so I love the NFL draft. No disrespect to the NFL draft. I'm not calling you out, boo. I still love you, NFL draft. However, before the NFL draft happens, there's a free agency class. And ideally, the Saints are appealing enough to make moves in free agency in order to be able to maximize what they can do in the NFL draft. Now, this is a little bit of a rehash of something I talked about yesterday, but I really wanted to bring this up to the forefront of the conversation because I wanted to dive into kind of this next angle around it, but I'm also curious about what you think as well. Like, would you rather see the Saints lose out and keep their draft position? Like, have you seen enough to say, all right, pack it up, boys, all good? Or would you rather see this team win games and be attractive and be an attractive destination, to other players that might look to find a place to land where they can build something, where they can be a part of turning something around? Players love that idea. Players love the idea of being able to arrive somewhere and be a part of its next era. They love the idea of selecting Kennesaw State on college football, on the college football EA Sports video game and building up a program. And that's kind of what Kellen Moore is doing right now. He inherited, I feel like Kennesaw State was like the worst team that you could pick in college football. I think it was a good friend of mine that told me that. But, whoever it is, like if you love doing stuff like that, like the players like being a part of that storyline too. And I think that that's something that the Saints have the ability to be able to do. They're showing more promise right now than the New York Giants, than the New York Jets, than the Tennessee Titans, maybe the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, as Shedeur Sanders continues to perform, hope is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But now they're talking about how Deshaun Watson is probably going to be a part of that conversation at starting quarterback next year, which what a waste. But anyway, there's so much about what this New Orleans Saints team is doing right now that's going to be attractive to players if they can continue to put it together and if they can continue to prove that they are building a program that's worth being a part of its next era. And that's what Kellen Moore was hired to do. That's what these players were signed to be a part of. That's what this draft class has been such a big part of. This 2025 draft class is one of the best draft classes we've seen in New Orleans since 2017, if not the best draft class that we've seen in New Orleans since 2017. You have an outstanding first-round pick in Kelvin Banks Jr., who's been awesome at left tackle, comes in and slides into one of the toughest positions to play in football and is on an island most of the time all by himself as a rookie, lining up against some premier pass rushers in the NFL. You have a second-round pick who's all of a sudden showing that he has franchise quarterback potential. If nothing else, at worst, it seems like he's got QB1 potential. And then you build off of that to guys like Danny Stutzman, Jonas Sanker, who have walked into big-time roles, Jonas Sanker and Quincy Riley, who have walked into starting caliber roles. You have some guys that are dealing with injuries like Vernon Broughton. You have some guys on the practice squad like Moliki Matavao, as well as Fadil Diggs. And you have Devin Neal, who just had an early, I would call it like a breakout light game for him, right? 70 yards, 14 receiving yards on one catch. There's a lot of building blocks here to where maybe you're not looking at this team and going, okay, I can see them being in the playoffs next season, but you are looking at them and saying, okay, what the foundation of this is clear. And the ability to add talent to this team becomes really impactful immediately if you can build that talent and add that talent through free agency. If people want to be a part of what you're building. And right now, the Saints are showing some promise and they're creating something that's worth building. Winning as many games over the course of this stretch of the next 4 would be a humongous step forward in terms of being an attractive destination for those players. Coming up next, in order to do that, the New Orleans Saints are going to need to set their next improvement sights on the defensive side, particularly when it comes to stopping the run. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything has changed and everything can feel different. That's what makes live betting so much fun over at FanDuel. You're not just watching the game, you are reacting to it in real time. The lines in terms of spreads, they move, totals move during the game. You can get it on player props like touchdown scores. You can even get into drive results. I love drive results, especially in college football where things are maybe a little bit more unpredictable. And so the odds can work in your favor in some cases. If your receiver gets hot, the defense tightens up, momentum shifts after a turnover, FanDuel is responding, and so can you. It could be a lot of fun for you too. This weekend, the New Orleans Saints 2.5-point underdogs at home against the Carolina Panthers. Are you buying the momentum? You can get in on it over at FanDuel today. So if you want to be right in the middle of all of the action as the NFL season comes to a close, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, family, if the New Orleans Saints do want to go on that run at the end of the 2025 season here, one thing they're going to have to do is improve their run defense, and they're going to have to do that desperately and very quickly. If nothing else, it's something they've got to get better by 2026. We appreciate you very much for being here with us, making us your first listen and being an everydayer on the show. I want to remind you about our everydayer program. We have 2 levels of that. $5 a month, you get ad-free. $15 a month, not only do you get ad-free, but you get 15% off of our new Locked On merch store and a bunch of great stuff, including one-on-one texting, film studies, exclusive content, all the good stuff that you know and love that I love to be able to create. You can come through for that, including exclusive interviews, exclusive Q&As, and all that stuff too. So head over to lockedonsaints.supercast.com to get started today. Choose your membership level, and then you can move on from there. You can also find a link in the description. If nothing else, it's great to have ad-free for $5 a month. So make sure you come through and check us out over there. All right, so for New Orleans, the next big improvement for them has got to be the run defense. We've seen some improvements that New Orleans has made over the course of the past few games. On the defensive side, they're top 10 when it comes to third down defense. And over on the offensive side, they're performing well in converting third downs. You look at last week's game, they were 0% on third down conversions on offense in the first half. Didn't convert a single first down, but then they were 71.4%, 5 of 7 in the second half, including going 4 of 5 in the fourth quarter alone. That's a huge step forward for New Orleans, and a team that had I'm not lying when I say this, it was the 4th worst going into week 13. It was the 4th worst red zone offense of the decade. That's the last 10 years. 317th out of 320 seasons, get it to 32 teams, 10 seasons, right? Out of all them seasons, they were the 4th worst red zone offense, converting touchdowns in the red zone at just 34.5% over the course of the past 2 games. They're 4 of 5 in the red zone. Touchdowns, not just scoring, TDs. That's big for this New Orleans Saints team. Those are major improvements for them that they've already shown. Now, both of those improvements are over on the offensive side, except for the third down defense. Third down defense has been really good for New Orleans as of late. And if you look at last night, or you look at Sunday's game up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their fourth down defense was really good as well, forcing 5 turnovers on downs in that game, forcing the Tampa Bay Bucs to go 2 of 7 on fourth down. But one of the biggest things we have to look at here is run defense. The Saints do not have a strong run defense, and that was a big focus for them over the course of the 2025 offseason, adding Devon Godchaux, adding Vernon Broughton, who was supposed to help them there as well. Now, of course, Vernon Broughton had that injury that ended his season early. But as of right now, the Saints defense still ranks 24th in the league against the run. And over the course of the past 7 games, they're ranking right now 26th against the run. And that's not super surprising. You look at some of their most recent games, just the most recent 3, 179 rushing yards surrendered against the Bucs, 164 yards surrendered against the Miami Dolphins, and 121 yards surrendered against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, all 3 of those teams, very, very talented running back rooms, right? There's no doubt about that. Atlanta's got Bijan Robinson as well as Tyler Algier. You look at the Miami Dolphins, who have Devon Achane, as well as Ollie Gordon, who didn't really get super involved against the Saints, but still somebody that is a bit of a change of pace back for them. You look at Tampa with Rashad White, as well as, of course, Bucky Irving. 179 rushing yards there, along with a quarterback that can run in a few of those places as well. That was something that was tough for the Saints to stop. And so it's one of the reasons why New Orleans, and honestly, go back more than one more game from that, right? 73 rushing yards allowed to the Carolina Panthers before the bye week. But right before that, 171 given up to the Los Angeles Rams. Go back one game before that, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Saints held them to 88 yards. What happened a game before that in Chicago? 222 rushing yards. So it has really been sort of this up and down, up and down, up and down kind of defense when it comes to stopping the run, except for the last 3 games where they have been, simply put, very bad against the run. And honestly, the Saints held up against Tampa pretty well, just had some breakaway runs, like the big 30-plus yard run that got away from them. They had the other one, a couple of breakaway runs by Baker Mayfield, who was able to go and pick up some chunk plays. I consider quarterback rushing chunk plays to be 10 or more. It felt like he had a couple of those, or at least close to a couple of those. And so that's got to be the next big priority for New Orleans. Like, they have done a very good job of defending the pass. They've been excellent against the kind of air attack of NFL offenses. You look at the last 10 games, they've held their opposing teams or their opponents to under 200 passing yards in 8 of those games, including 4 consecutive games now as well, against the Bucs, against the Dolphins, against the Falcons, and against the Panthers. Now, of course, they got 267 yards they gave up to the Rams, but then before that, under 100 for Tampa, under 100 for Chicago. And those were teams that, by the way, had good receivers available to them. Like, they still played against some of their top wideouts, even though Tampa was still dealing with injuries at the time, no doubt about that. But I mean, that Chicago team still had Rome Odunze. That Chicago team still has DJ Moore and other pieces. And so the Saints passing defense has done a good job. Now, a part of why that is because they've struggled against the run is what many would say. But if you look at where the Saints rank when it comes to passing attempts against, it kind of eschews a bit that situation. In fact, their defense has faced the league's lowest amount of rushing attempts, but have seen the second most passing attempts against. So the reason why the Saints have defended the pass well is because they've defended the pass well, not because teams aren't passing against them. The Saints have not defended the run well, despite the fact that teams are running against them at the league's lowest rate when it comes to attempts against. And so for where you're looking for this team to go next, a big part of what they got to do is get better against the run. Now, they've shown some signs of it. They're top 10 right now in the NFL on defense when it comes to yards per carry allowed in the run game. So they're not allowing a ton when it comes to a per carry basis. The issue is that they're allowing a couple of these breakaway runs here and there that end up chewing up everything else and making it so that in that case, or in those cases, that yardage number is still ticking up on a per game basis, even if it's not on a per attempt basis. So that's got to be the next big thing that the Saints look to improve. We talked about coming into this game and saying, okay, or coming out of that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game and saying, okay, what are some of the things that still need to improve? That's number one. I think there's still some game management stuff that needs to improve as well. There's still some play calling things that you want to see get a little bit more comfortable, but I think Kellen Moore is getting a little bit more comfortable. And I think that once he has kind of his offense built as well, that's going to make a big difference as well. And a big part of having your offense built is having your players healthy. And the Saints have not necessarily had that, especially in the offensive line. Right tackle Taliese Fuaga could potentially get back to the lineup before the season is over, but kind of holding him out for at least a couple more games might be in their best interest. Let's dive into that next as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by friends over at Mint Mobile. There's a reason to let big wireless continue to drain your wallet, especially during the holiday season. And right now, you're getting the best deal possible over at Mint Mobile. 50% off of all of their unlimited plans. 3, 6, 12-month plans for $15 a month. It's time for you to stop messing around with your overpriced phone plans and give them the big Scrooge treatment. Get the service that you know and love that's fast and reliable, even on the go. So turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com NFL. It's a limited time offer, upfront payments of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, and $180 for 12 months. Plans are required. It's about $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees and initial term only. Greater than 35 megabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device is required. Availability, speed, and coverage all vary. See mintmobile.com for details. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints desperately need help on their offensive line. However, rushing starting right tackle Taliese Fuaga back into the lineup before he's ready, even if that means keeping him out for the rest of the season, might not be the most advantageous situation for New Orleans. We appreciate you very much for being here with us, making us your first listen. I told you about our Everydayer program, the all ad-free $5 a month subscription, as well as our all access $15 a month, which comes with a lot of bonus or exclusive content, all access episodes, all those other things. If you want to get a free month of that and give it a try out, share your Spotify Wrapped and YouTube replay on social media and tag our Locked On Podcast Network national account at Locked On Network on X, as well as at Locked On Podcast on Instagram, and you'll get a free month of the program so you can go ahead and give it a try, see if it's to your liking, and if you want to stick around after that, you're more than welcome to do so. So I think the big thing for me when it comes to the Saints offensive line is that obviously they have had some issues when it comes to being healthy, right? They've, the starting center, Eric McCoy, is out for the season. Really, it's not really a health thing at left guard. They traded away Trevor Penning, and so they have a backup there, but it's compounded by the fact that the Saints not only didn't have Taliese Fuaga last week up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but also lost his replacement, Asim Richards, and had to go to William Sherman as well later on. So they're 3 deep at right tackle all of a sudden, with a team that's been relatively healthy based on its past and based on, if you want to see an unhealthy team, go and look at the Minnesota Vikings injury report from like this past week. And you'll see the comparison of where the Saints are actually on the right side of this thing for a change. And so with all of that in consideration, and by the way, Asim Richards' injury, I asked Kellen Moore about it on Monday, and he mentioned it was a high ankle injury. I assume that means a high ankle sprain, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him miss time. And so getting Fuaga back in the lineup would make a lot of sense for New Orleans. However, you're talking about a guy that's been dealing with, he had back injury, knee issues, ankle injury, now the other ankle's injured. So you're dealing with a lot of stuff for a big and powerful guy having to do with his back and lower body. And that's not often a great sign in the NFL. Now, I'm not going to presume how Taliese's feeling, right? I can't do that. And I wouldn't want to do that. I'm not trying to put any words in his mouth. I've not spoken to him about his injury, stuff like that. But when it comes down to where he is, it could be worth it for the New Orleans Saints to consider either A, shutting him down for the rest of the season so that he's goes into an offseason a little bit early, gets an opportunity to get better, really gets to kind of take his time with it, or at least keeping him out for the next game or the next game, right? You've got the Carolina Panthers, who don't have a very fearsome pass rush on the way. You have a New York Jets team that doesn't have a very fearsome anything on the way. Opportunity to maybe give him a little bit of rest and then wrap him up at the end of the season when it comes to the Titans as well as the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are the game that makes the most sense to say that, oh, the Saints need him on the field, right? Because that's a good pass rush there all of a sudden. It's such a weird thing to say about Atlanta. But I don't know if rushing him back is really a good situation. You've got a guy like William Sherman that you can continue to get a look at. You've got a guy like Barry Wesley that during the preseason is a guy that I didn't ever expect to make the roster. And then all of a sudden they put him on injured reserve and then waited to kind of bring him back. And now he's on the roster. Then they moved him to the practice squad, moved William Sherman up to the active roster. But so that you have these tackles that you can get a look at, young tackles, right? Asim Richards was a guy that they traded for, so it made a lot of sense for them to, make sure that they continued to get a look at him. But while he's dealing with his injury, if he's going to miss time at all, which might not be the case, could be the case for the short term, I'm not sure, continuing to get looks at some of these younger players doesn't make sense. On top of that, it might be worth it to start getting a look at a guy like Torricelli Simpkins as well. The interior of the New Orleans Saints offensive line has been hashtag not good. It has struggled a lot over the course of the season. It was funny. I was doing over at LouisianaSports.net, we do the top 5 and bottom 5 PFF grade players for each week. And you don't put a lot of stock into PFF grades, but it's good content. It's fun. Like everyone's graded across the same metric, so it means at least something in that case. But obviously, like offensive line evaluation is doubtful when you don't know what the roles of the offensive line are. You're not in the huddle. You're not in the film room. You're not in the position room. So what's the not knowing what the assignments are, what the requests are, what you're asked to do, what your technique is, all those other things like that kind of creates a little bit of a thing. But they are one of the only analytics sites that actually makes sure and requires their film watchers to watch plays more than once. And I think that there's some value in that part of it, at least when it comes to the raw stats. Grading, raw stats, yeah. But it was interesting. Despite the fact that Cesar Ruiz was graded as one of the highest graded, is the highest graded run blocker, he was the lowest, or the highest graded pass blocker, he was the lowest graded run blocker in this game. And so if you have a guy behind him, or even behind Dylan Radins, who's been okay since going back into the lineup, and you've got a guy like Taliese Fuaga sitting around, and you love his play style, you love his aggression, you love his physicality, all that, maybe an opportunity to continue to get a look at him. Now, I'm not touting Taliese Fuaga like the hero that he often gets touted as. I think that he played well during his time, but he didn't show much better than Dylan Radins has shown. And so, but maybe with exposure and opportunities, it's a big deal when you're talking about an undrafted free agent looking as good as a multi-year veteran that's on another contract, right? So continuing to develop these offensive linemen could make a lot of sense. Same thing could happen at tackle as well. So rushing Fuaga back, maybe not the right choice for New Orleans. Okay, while rushing him back might not be the best option for the Saints, one player absolutely needs to be back on the field next week, and we now know that he will be. Let's get to a little bit of lagniappe for you. Charlie Smith. I asked Kellen Moore very plainly, and he tried to beat me to it. He kept saying yes while I was asking the question. I was like, I want to power through. I'm going to ask this question because I want to make sure the question is clear and the answer is clear. And so the question that I asked was, is Charlie Smith going to be the kicker next week up against Carolina? Charlie Smith missed from 48 in Tampa, made his later field goal, and made all 3 of his extra points. And let's not forget, also made his debut field goal up against the Miami Dolphins from 56 yards out. It was the 3rd longest debut field goal for a kicker in NFL history. The 2 that were longer than his were each 58 yards years and years and years ago. And so it made sense to me that you would give Charlie Smith the opportunity to be back out on the field against the Carolina Panthers, let him kick in front of the home crowd, and let him, quote unquote, bounce back. I think the word that Kellen Moore used was rebound a little bit. And I think Kellen Moore would agree that he's probably already rebounded, right? He missed the 48-yarder, he sunk the later kick, and then he made all 3 of the extra points. And so you can kind of already feel the rebound is there, but letting him go in for a 3rd game, which will be his final elevation, and letting him go out there in front of the home crowd and get another opportunity is the right choice. I knew the Saints wouldn't overreact to this with him having missed that 48-yarder because they waited probably too long to make the decision with their former kicker in Blake Grupe, right? And so going from that to Charlie Smith and making sure that he gets the additional opportunity here moving forward is the right choice. The question will be, what do they do for the last 3 games? Does Charlie Smith make it so that your only option is to move him to your active roster and let him continue to kick for you over the course of the last 3 matchups? Or do you use all 3 elevations for Charlie Smith, keep him on your practice squad where he doesn't count against your roster limit, where he doesn't count against your practice squad roster limit either? And it's not like a team can just sign him willy-nilly off of the practice squad. They would have to add him to their active roster. They would have to choose to make that decision, and he would have to agree to it. That's still a negotiation. It's still being signed. It's not like being picked up off of waivers. It doesn't just happen. You have to agree to it as a player. And then, if that's the case, they would then be able to use the last 3 games to elevate and use all 3 of the Cade York elevations and get a look at him before going into the offseason. It's a pragmatic approach. It's a pragmatic approach to get a look at both kickers for 3 games over the course of the last 6. However, you'd love to see Charlie Smith just say, nope, I ain't even stupid. I ain't even gonna give you the chance, and just make sure that he gets the job done on Sunday up against the Carolina Panthers. And if he does that, then he would get the opportunity to be on the active roster, continue to move forward, things like that. But I understand the pragmatism behind, hey, get a look at both kickers before the season's out. So we'll see which way they go. But the most important thing is the Saints not overreacting, not surprising at all, but not overreacting to his 1 miss He was always going to eventually miss one, and allowing him to go in and have this opportunity to kick in front of the home crowd on Sunday against the Carolina Panthers. Pretty cool opportunity for Charlie Smith. All right, coming up in tomorrow's episode, the anatomy of a breakaway quarterback run. We'll get into our abbreviated all-access film study notes for you here on Film Watch Wednesday. We appreciate you very much as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.